Okay, so what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Black and Intellectual YouTube channel. I do want to give my election day reaction. I want to give the good and the bad, and sort of give my verdict at the end in terms of what I think it all means. So let's sort of begin. Now, yesterday, I was tweeting out a lot of the results that were coming in, and a lot of what I said seemed a little pessimistic, and I'm still honestly a tad bit pessimistic. Maybe not quite as much as I had been earlier on in the night. I think as the night sort of began wearing on, and we started getting more results, and it was confirmed that the Democrats will retake the House. I started feeling a little bit better, but there's still a lot of negative things and some negative takes on the night where I feel like there was definitely a blue wave, but the wave wasn't as strong as we had hoped it would be. It wasn't as strong as I think a lot of people anticipated, certainly in terms of how people were talking about it. I think people expected a stronger showing, but I think also too, I think a lot of Republicans came out more Republicans than people expected came out and voted as well. So they kind of balanced off the blue wave. So this is the good. The Democrats retook the House and picked up at least 26 seats and possibly more since there are still some races that haven't been called yet. I've seen projections that say at the end, by when it's all said and done, it might be around 32, 33 seats or something like that. So that's definitely good information, and it does provide a much needed check on Trump's power. It's not this. It's not as big of a deal if we had retaken the Senate, but that's something that a lot of people didn't really expect to happen. But I think we really underperformed in the Senate races. To be perfectly honest with you, now the Democrats did pick up 7 governor seats. They picked up, so they flipped 7 seats that were previously Republican to Democrat. That includes Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Kansas. Chris Kobach lost. That is a very big deal. So many people wanted to see him lose. So that's definitely a good take from this. And even in Michigan, where Trump only won by 11,000 votes in 2016, that is nothing. Okay, the Democrat who won there, Gretchen Whitmer, appears to be on the right side of at least a couple issues I looked into before making this video. I haven't looked into her stance on every single issue, but most importantly, I wanted to find her views on the Flint water crisis. Okay, given that she's Michigan, the previous governor, the Republican governor there was a disaster, and I think he had a lot to do with he did have a lot to do with what went down, even though he's not being held accountable. And she definitely seems to be on the right side of that, based on some of the things that she's tweeted. And I think she, in the past, I want to say sometime in January, she called the Flint water crisis a humanitarian disaster or a humanitarian crisis or something like that. So she ran on that, and so she won. It's a big deal that she won that race. So that's huge. So maybe now we can get those pipes fixed. A midterm record has been made with over 100 women being elected to Congress. Most of them Democrat. 80 something of them are Democrat. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Presley, another woman by the name of Lauren Underwood. And there are some firsts here as well. AOC is the youngest woman ever elected to the House. You have 2 Muslim women, the first Native American woman. I could go on and on. So that's also relevant, and that's very important. And I think it's a good thing that people celebrate that and take the positives out of that, because there are definitely some fighters in this list here. These aren't establishment politicians here. I mean, we elected some fighters, and I look forward to see. I've looked forward to watch and follow the careers of some of these individuals, and I look forward to see what they do when they get in the House. I mean, that's honestly the most important thing here. And then what else? So you had some amendments that were passed on the state level. The biggest one that I saw a lot of people talking about was Amendment 4, which passed in Florida, which grants voting rights back to 1.5 million felons in the state. This is huge, not only because Florida was one of the worst felony disenfranchisement states in the country, which is a major issue within voter suppression. But look at how big of an impact that's going to have on future elections. Okay, Ron DeSantis won by less than 1% of the vote. He won by like zero point 0.6 or 0.7% of the vote. Okay, that he is not a lock for re-election. Okay, but I'm going to get to the Florida race in a second. But this is the largest expansion of voting rights since the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. People have been fighting hard for this for a very long time. Okay, and I'm happy to see this get passed, and I think it's going to be significant. Now, of course, I don't want to speak. I don't want to talk as if all of those people are going to be, solid D votes. But I'm willing to bet that a lot of them, I could be wrong about this, but I'm willing to bet a lot of them will be Democrats. And then in Louisiana, a Jim Crow era law was finally gutted that allowed for non-unanimous jury verdicts for felony convictions. I mean, the fact that we even have these Jim Crow era laws even still on the books, I kind of just think it shows you how much racism is still very much alive and well, and how a lot of people within the majority society, the larger white society, just simply don't have an issue with a lot of this stuff. But again, I'm going to touch on that in a second when I talk about some of the bad takes from last night. Democrats flipped several state legislatures, most notably in my state where I'm at right now in North Carolina. Democrats broke the supermajority stranglehold Republicans had on the state Senate and the state House here. So that's a big deal, okay? Because the General Assembly, the North Carolina General Assembly, was one of the most conservative right wing aspects of the government here. So we have a Democratic governor. We have a more Democratic General Assembly. And there was even a judge who was appointed, who's big on voting rights here in North Carolina. So I'm confident, with North Carolina going into 2020. I'm comfortable where they're headed. Now, I don't like the fact, and I'm only bringing this up now. This is a bad thing, but I'm not going to save it for the bad section because I'm not going to talk about North Carolina anymore after this. North Carolina, and I voted against this, and I didn't want it to pass. North Carolina voted or passed an amendment, a constitutional amendment for voter ID. Okay, that was honestly one of the major reasons why I voted in the North Carolina election, because we didn't have any governor running and there weren't any senators up. So but that's not good, and that is a loss. But I think that's balanced out with some of the other things, positive things that happened in the state. So we'll have to see where it goes from here in the future. And this is important. This is historically relevant. Okay, the fact that we had 3 black governors, okay, all of them, varying degrees of progressive, who ran in Florida, Georgia, and Maryland, and 2 of them were very winnable, and might honestly, one of them might still be winnable, or actually still is winnable, and that's in Georgia because Stacey Abrams hasn't conceded. There's still votes out there, and they're trying to get Kemp under 50%. As long as they can get some more votes and get him under 50%, I heard that there's some absentee ballots that are still out there that need to be counted. So if they can get him under, I don't think the absentee ballots are going to put her over the edge, over 50%, but I do think it'll drop him below 50%. And that's really all they're going for, so that they can force a runoff election at the beginning of December in a month. So that's still, Georgia's still out there, but Florida and Maryland have been lost, and this has only happened one other time in U.S. history, where you've had 3 black candidates run in the general election for governors, and the only other time it happened was 12 years ago in 2006, when you had 2 Republicans, so they weren't even progressive, You had two Republicans, and then you had one Democrat. The Democrat I know for a fact was Deval Patrick. Okay, and I would say Abrams, Gillum, and Jealous are to the left of Deval Patrick. You know, I wouldn't say, I would say probably Jealous was probably the one who was furthest to the left of Deval Patrick, but I wouldn't say Abrams and Gillum are Deval Patrick 2.0 or anything like that, and until proven otherwise. But we're not going to get that opportunity for at least for Gillum. We're not going to get the opportunity to see whether or not he'd be Deval Patrick 2.0 because he lost. So it's a big deal that we did this, and black voting power is real. Okay, this is why voting matters. This is why. Look at the narrow margin by which Ron DeSantis beat Andrew Gillum. He beat him by less than 1%. That was a very winnable race, and that's why that loss stings so much. Oh, because Gillum could have beaten him. He could have definitely beaten him. Okay, so every vote counts, and black voting power is real. You know, it was proven in 2008. It was reaffirmed in 2012. And I think the fact that we got 3 to run in the general election with the help of white Democrats and white progressives and white leftists as well. I'm not saying we're the only ones that voted for him, but black women are the most progressive voting bloc in this country. And black voters are a significant element of the Democratic Party base. Okay, but it's not treated that way. Black women are not treated as the most progressive voting bloc in this country, even though they routinely prove time and time again that it's them who are like preventing some of these worst politicians from coming into power. It didn't really work in Florida, but this is why voter suppression is such a big deal, and our issues need to be taken seriously and need to be addressed. Okay, that is one of my takeaways from what happened yesterday. That's a takeaway that you're not really going to see a lot of other people emphasize. Now here's the bad. Okay, so I just mentioned the trio of Abrams, Gillum, and Jealous. The downside is, like I said, 2 of them lost, and one of them is seeking a runoff election that is going to be very hard. And there's something, and I said this on Twitter, and it really kind of resonated with people. There needs to be something said about white America's support and indifference towards white supremacy. Okay, both Brian Kemp and Ron DeSantis ran very racist campaigns, and they had racist and I'm not saying that their campaigns directed or organized these robocalls, but there were very blatantly racist robocalls targeted towards both Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams. Brian Kemp is on camera taking pictures with a man who has publicly said on social media that black women and children need to be shot and killed, and who threatened to he went to this rally, the Stacey Abrams rally, and threatened a violent insurrection if Stacey Abrams won, and threatened a black female veteran, like just some real like crazy off the wall crap. And white voters supported these men in numbers high enough to propel them forward. Now, again, Georgia is still fluid, but the point is, Brian Kemp should not have been in a position to even get where he's at right now. And the same goes for Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis came out of the gate the day after he won the primary, the Republican primary, calling Andrew Gillum a monkey. He said that coming out of the gate. By all accounts, he ran a terrible campaign. All he did was run on Trump and people, but hey, it was enough to propel him forward. White voters didn't have a problem with that stuff. And I mean, that's an issue. I mean, it's an issue that, okay, this is going back to Chris Kobach. It's a big deal that Kobach lost. And I said this on Twitter as well. But I wonder if Chris Kobach had been running against a black person, would he have won? Would you have literally had white voters who might have voted for a white female or a white male running against Chris Kobach, but they wouldn't have voted for a black one, a black female or a black male running against Chris Kobach? That's an issue that needs to be brought out there because Chris Kobach got stomped. Let me actually pull up the numbers. I didn't write it down. I know that when I looked at it at one point in time, he was getting destroyed. Chris Kobach. Okay, so it tightened up slightly, but he lost 47, basically 48 to 43. If you round up and round down, it's 48 to 43. There was at one point in time, Laura Kelly had like 51% on him. But it looks like he came back. He came back a little bit, but he still got handedly defeated. Okay, so that happened in Kansas, which is definitely good. But I felt like, and I said this on Twitter as well, I felt like with not Larry Hogan, Ben Jealous, and Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams, I just felt like there was an anti-black vote. I felt like, just got the impression that there were a lot of people, despite the fact that we did flip 7 governorships. Okay, we did do that. Okay, but all of those candidates, and they might be good governors. I'm not going to say they're all going to be bad. They might get some good policy out of them in the future, right? But they're all of a familiar skin tone to white voters. Okay, it's a big deal. I think it's very important in telling that the 3 black governor or the 3 black politicians running for governor all either lost or are in an unfavorable position. Okay, and of course I'm talking about Stacey Abrams as being in the unfavorable position. The most favorable result would be if she had won last night. And I mean, we'll know eventually. I think in the coming months, we're going to see just how many people were affected by voter suppression, not just in Georgia, but in Florida. Trust me, there are people on that now. You never hear about the effects of voter suppression immediately after the election. It always takes a while for that data and that information to come out. And then it starts coming out that X amount of people were prevented from voting due to either, exact match in Georgia. Because I was hearing reports when the voting was going on and before the polls closed, I was hearing reports that black voters were being rejected due to an exact match. There was a polling location where people were in line for hours because the polling machines, the voting machines, didn't have a cord of some sort. Like there was just a lot of just a lot of convenient things that fell in Brian Kemp's favor. Very convenient activities, right? But it will come out in the coming months and years, or hopefully not years, but the coming months, exactly what happened. And going forward, the Democratic Party needs to take voter suppression much more seriously. Voter suppression needs to become a top issue because the Democratic Party is just not going to be as strong nationally if there's not some sort of new Voting Rights Act, which is my suggestion. I ultimately think there needs to be a new Voting Rights Act, honestly. But it's the Democratic Party is always going to be on the wrong side of a lot of races, a lot of close races, because of voter suppression issues. So a lot of people are going to look at the loss by Gillum, and I'm seeing this already where people are saying, well, you see, he shouldn't have aligned himself with Hillary Clinton, and he shouldn't have aligned himself with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And while I don't think those things helped, and I defended Andrew Gillum in several videos, especially like my last video that I made about him, I definitely don't think that helped. But if you were in the state of Florida and you seriously either didn't vote or you voted for Ron DeSantis because you didn't like the fact that Andrew Gillum campaigned with Hillary Clinton, honestly, that says more about you than anything else because you definitely empowered the worst candidate. You definitely empowered the worst politician. That's for sure. And it kind of just shows you that you're prepared. You don't really necessarily care about white supremacists and Trump acolytes being in power. If it means that you get to sort of flex some sort of political hatred that you have for the Clintons, like that. Come on, that's ridiculous. One is clearly more important than the other. Okay, I don't think that's the reason why Gillum lost. Like I said earlier, I think there was an anti-black vote. I think a lot of white folks are perfectly fine with, and not all white folks. I think you have some white folks who are supportive of racism, obviously, maybe like a third or so. But then I think you have another 15, 20% or so who are just completely indifferent towards it. They don't really care either way, and they just as quickly support a white supremacist as anyone else if they like if they like what that white supremacist is saying. Like they don't necessarily care enough about racism to act against it. And that's not good either. So they might not be card carrying racists themselves. They might not be outwardly racist. They might be personally fine people. But if you're not actually if you don't care enough about the issue to make sure racist people who can do real damage to people of color and to black people, okay, if you don't care enough about that to care what happens to those people, that means you kind of low key support racism, whether you really want to acknowledge that or not. And I mean, you're not going to hear a lot of people say that about the Florida race. You're definitely not going to hear that from the mainstream media. Okay, I've heard in the corporate media this morning. I heard someone saying something along the lines of, well, if Andrew Gillum didn't make such a big deal about impeaching Trump, he might have done better. So people are going to attribute all sorts of things then other than the fact that white folks just got behind a racist. That's honestly what it boils down to. They preferred a worse politician and a racist, someone who doesn't believe in science, yet you live in Florida, which is getting hit by hurricanes every year, but you're perfectly fine with Ron DeSantis, who doesn't care about the environment or doesn't care about climate change science and things like that. You're perfectly fine with him being in office. It makes no sense to me, and it really honestly just comes down to the fact that white folks are more comfortable with people like him than giving black people too much power. Because I get the impression that folks are fine if you have a black mayor. They're fine with black mayors. They're fine with black, members of the House of Representatives. When you start talking about governors, you start talking about, which there have only been like 3 or 4 black governors in U.S. history. There haven't been a whole lot of them to begin with, and there's a reason why. There's a reason why Barack Obama was the first black president, and you see the virulently racist reaction to the Obama presidency through the elevation of Donald Trump. They do not want black politicians to have too much power, and I just got that feeling yesterday when I was seeing the results coming in the other states where white Democrats were doing very well, but then I saw that jealous Gillum and Abrams were struggling, and I mean there's if you don't think there's a racial component to that, you don't really understand America. Okay, but I'm gonna digress on that. I might touch on that a little bit more in the future video. In Maryland, it wasn't as outwardly racial against Ben Jealous. He didn't face the same level of racist attacks that Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams faced. But we saw the Maryland Democratic Party really stab him in the back. And I do think that there's something racial to that as well. It's not outwardly racial, sort of like the other 2 races were. They supported, the Maryland Democrats got behind Larry Hogan against Ben Jealous because they didn't like Ben Jealous' stance on single-payer health care. Okay, but we can't ignore the racial component here as well. I saw one poll that said only 29% or 28% of white voters in Maryland viewed Jealous favorably. 28%. The overwhelming majority of white voters in Maryland, that includes, you would think that includes a lot of white Democrats as well if his number is as low as 28%. The majority of them view him unfavorably. Based on what? I wonder. Now his numbers could have been higher among black voters. I saw a poll that said he was viewed favorably. Only like 65% of black voters viewed him favorably. But I think the number of black voters who viewed him unfavorably was in the single digits. So it seems like a lot of voters just probably were indifferent. A lot of black voters just didn't care either way. But so yeah, that's definitely something. There's definitely something strange that happened in Maryland. I think that could have been a more competitive race, and it's possible that he was just running at a bad time against a very popular governor. Larry Hogan is one of those popular governors in the country, so it was going to be a tough uphill battle regardless. But going back to what I was saying earlier about white voters and supporting racism, it's not just their support of Brian Kemp and Ron DeSantis. Steve King won in Iowa. Okay, so he's back. We still have to endure Steve King for another. I don't even want to think about it. And then Duncan Hunter. This race hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Okay, Duncan Hunter, California's 50th congressional district. He defeated Amar Campa Najjar, who is Palestinian American. And the reason I'm bringing up this race is it too was virulently racist. Duncan Hunter ran a blatantly racist campaign. He ran an ad calling Najjar a quote radical Muslim trying to infiltrate Congress. Okay, and saying that electing a Najjar to Congress would be a national security threat. Okay, they also ran these really bullshit anti-Semitism claims against him, and Duncan Hunter tried to say that Najjar's grandfather had some sort of role to play in the 1972 Munich terrorist attack that killed 11 Israelis. So they were throwing everything at him, everything racial that you could possibly think of. They were throwing at Amar Campa Najjar, and he just lost the race again. So you have 4 races right here. Okay, 2 congressional races and 2 gubernatorial, two congressional, really 3 gubernatorial if you include Abrams, even though that race is still going on, where there was a very clear racial component in these races, and every single one of them, the white voters got behind these racist candidates. Okay, this is something that you are not going to see a lot of people emphasize, because a lot of people are going to want to focus on the good and the victories, and I'm all fine with that. There are positive things to take out of this, which is why I mentioned that stuff earlier in the video. But this is not a good thing either. This shows you that for a large segment of the white population, you can double down on white supremacy and get elected. That has been proven now twice, two election cycles in a row. Donald Trump ran on racism in 2016, and you had these candidates here who also ran on racism or had very racist past. Okay, and they got this. White voters just didn't care about that. Okay, there's a discussion to be had there about that for sure. In the Senate nationwide, the Democrats and this is also another negative for the night. Nationwide, the Democrats got 55% of the popular vote. 55%. Yet and still, Republicans got Republicans only got 43%. So Democrats got 55, Republicans got 43% of the popular vote. But Republicans picked up like 3 seats. They lost. They got destroyed in the popular vote. And they still picked up more seats. So once again, we are showing proof that Democrats are more popular and get more support from the American people, but there is this built-in Republican edge that has everything to do with our ass-backwards electoral system. Okay, our gains in the House could have been even bigger without gerrymandering. Imagine how many more seats we could have won if the map wasn't as gerrymandered as it currently is. And again, this is why, and this sounds controversial now after the fact, and I know I'm sounding a little contrarian, but this is why I say, and I doubled down on this last night. I said it twice. I have lost faith in the American electoral process. The way America does democracy is not healthy. It is not transparent. It is full of flaws. It is very easily riggable. I don't know if that's an actual word, but you can very easily rig these elections by using various voter suppression tactics. Okay, we do not have a good election system in this country. It is very antiquated, it is outdated, and it is in desperate need of modernization. Okay, and that is a fact. Okay, when I went to cast my vote yesterday, okay, I took my time. I made sure I had everything the way that I wanted it to, and then I had to feed my ballot into this little machine that looks like a printer. I know it's not a printer, but it looked like a printer. Kind of just feed it in there, and the only way you can tell that your vote is counted is the number goes. If you're like the 251st person to vote, the number will go up from 250 to 251. That's how you know your vote is quote unquote counted. You get no printout. There was no way I could know if my vote was being flipped or not. I don't know if my vote was being flipped or not because there was no paper trail. There was no readout because there were no voting machines. Which I don't. My only issue with voting machines is that there's no paper trail. If there's a paper trail with the voting machines and something comes out and you say, "Hold on, I didn't vote for this person. I want to redo." We should be able to do that. I don't like voting machines that have no paper trail, but at my voting location, they didn't even have the machines. It was just the ballot, and you just feed your little ballot into the machine, and that's it. I could not confirm who I voted for. I did not actually see anything confirming who I voted for. You just kind of have to take the system's word for it. And that's not good enough. It is 2018. We should be able to verify this stuff. It is a problem that my smartphone has better analytics than the American electoral system. It is a problem that I can get on Google Trends right now and get better data on everything under the sun, but I can't go to a website and verify that my vote was counted and that everybody that I wanted to vote for actually got voted for, or actually, the way it was supposed to be. So that is why I said that on Twitter last night. Yes, I understand that the wins are great. Okay, but I'm still cautiously optimistic, and well, honestly, I should say cautiously. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not as pessimistic as I had been earlier in the night. Like I said earlier, I feel a little bit better after sleeping on it, but man, there's still a huge hole that we are in right now. Okay, what happened last night was just a way of us stopping the bleeding. Okay, but we still have to retake the Senate, and we still have to beat Trump in 2020, which is going to be a lot easier with 7 new Democratic governors. Hopefully, they don't put some vote suppressing knuckleheads into secretaries of state around the country. But as long as we can depend on votes being counted in these states, that's the only thing I really care about at this point. But even though my faith in the electoral process, even though I'm jaded on that, I don't think this is a reason not to vote. I don't think this is a reason to give up. I think we should keep pushing harder. Okay, and even though I've lost faith in American style democracy, my faith in the American electorate on the left, okay, has never been stronger. I really believe in our ability to change the system, but man, it is going to take a very long time. It's not going to happen. Really, it's going to be slow, and it's going to require just millennials just getting older, and our generation just taking over. That's really honestly what it's going to come down to. So The verdict, I would say, from last night to end the video, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not getting my hopes up because this is still the Democratic Party. Let's not forget that this is still the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi is you know, it's highly speculated that she is going to be the next Speaker of the House. It really should be Barbara Lee, but you can already see them putting out, their little minions in the media to push Nancy Pelosi, to push the idea of Nancy Pelosi being the next Speaker. They're already putting that out there. Okay, they don't want Barbara Lee because, like I said earlier when I was talking about Gillum and Abrams and Ben Jealous, they don't want black people having too much power. That is a very real factor that even within the Democratic Party we just can't ignore. Okay, they do not want a black woman like Barbara Lee being in control of the House of Representatives, being Speaker of the House of Representatives. If you don't think that's not going through people's heads, once again, you don't know a whole lot about the United States. You don't understand a whole lot about race relations in this country. Okay, so like we're gonna have to see what happens when they get into office. So I'm not jumping off the roof. I'm not. Look, there are definitely some wins to hang our hats on, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to be more politically active than ever. There is a reason why they suppress the vote, and they suppress the vote because black voting power is real. It is effing real. Okay, and when we are able to vote, and when we are inspired to vote, we can win this. And I think you're going to see more, more black people running, getting into these general election gubernatorial races. I don't think this is the end. I want to see Andrew Gillum do something in the future. I definitely think he should stay in politics. He has a very good future. I just don't think it just didn't work out this time. I hope Stacey Abrams is able to force a runoff election, and I hope she wins. But if she doesn't, I hope she stays in politics. So we just have to keep pushing. And so, yes, there are positive things to take away, but there are some negative things that need to be factored in as well, that are pretty serious. So that's all I wanted to say about this. I'll be on the lookout for my next video and go to my blog at www.blackandintellectual.com.